Remember that song? Oh, you must be old. Welcome. Welcome to tonight's Sedge meeting. Before we get started, a couple announcements. This coming Saturday, Creative Life Center, we're holding a seance at 7:30. The following Saturday is our first Mentalist and Medium show of the year. All new acts. Both things start at 7:30, both at the Creative Life Center. Next month's Sedge meeting, February 3rd, something very unique, something we've never done before. We're having a variety show. We have a singer, a ventriloquist, a magician, some dancers, a juggler, and a mentalist. It should be a lot of fun. I hope everybody can come. Okay, enough of the advertising. Tonight's speaker, Mr. Mason Rumney, is going to make us familiar with the ancient wisdom of earth changes through frequency. Mason, if you please.
You're going to run that.
Thank you, Fred. Thankful for all. This is an advanced class in some sort of psychotronics and radionics and Reiki and other stuff that I've been exposed to. So, by and large, you guys can hear without this, right?
Yeah.
Back in
I
the
can
back?
hear you.
Okay. That's probably easier for me. I handed out a series of handouts, which is designed to hold your interest. Right. Have questions, references when you get to that. But my life started actually, like so many, with a near-death experience or some sort of change in consciousness. And when I came out of the coma after a week, I ended up looking for ways to alleviate pain. I mean, cracked the skull, jammed it down, broke the collarbone. The engine came in and crushed the ribs into the lungs. There's no way someone like me should be walking around, except for there's something beyond our consciousness. And those kinds of activities are what spurred me into this field. Well, I went headlong into it. Flanagan was a big part of that, and we're going to see some of those little YouTubes in a minute. But in the 70s, 76, 77, I started doing radio programs with the neurophone and other things. Since then, we're going to talk about and show something called megahydrate, which is a hydrogen bonding process. And I may mix it up compared to my outline, but if there's any questions you have, I'll be glad to ad lib on it. To start with, if we could start with one of those videos. The first one. And if you can't hear this, let me know. We'll turn the mic on up there. Everybody here?
So I think the world ought to know with your new neurophone that you were the father of all fathers in terms of getting really the neurophone that was going to open up the cosmic sounds.
Does it, in your research, connect left and right brain and create a cosmic, talk about that?
It does. You know, the sound of the universe is in all of us. We don't hear it because it's there all the time. And what happens is that if your left and right brains go into phase coherence, if they start communicating with each other, the male, the female brain, the creative and the intellectual, if they start communicating more coherently with each other, then we have access to all of it. And
the whole cosmic, and our cosmic
right,
connection, which is the work of the Hertogs.
Exactly.
Well, what's been your experience, Stephanie? You've been doing it for many years.
Well, I didn't really get behind it until I had a need, and that was between the
geoengineering and harping, and I'm very sensitive. I found that using the neurophone is helping me to manage what the impacts I'm having from geoengineering.
So what has it done for you in particular?
It settles down what feels like an upset frequency in my brain that actually has a sound to it. And then when I use the neurophone, that sound shifts. It feels like it just calms everything down. And it gives me peace of mind.
So that's right.
Well, playing around with it, I know the odd thing for people when they first put it on is you always think you hear it through the ears.
Yeah.
But of course, this is, you can see from Stephanie, you're actually hearing through the bones up in your forehead. And you're actually not hearing through the physical outside ears, you're actually hearing through bones inside your head anyway. So it's an amazing thing. I know you were shocked to see
Well,
that.
I'm shocked that I could hear without my ears.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, in fact, you plug up your ears and it's loud.
and how about for deaf people, is it?
Well, you can make, this can be converted into a device for deaf people, but that's a medical device, and it will require much more power. And the other thing is that we've worked with some deaf people, and what happens is that when they put it on, it's just signal. They don't have any idea what that signal is.
There's no way to relate to that.
And because it's just some kind of noise coming in.
Well, but how does it relate to consciousness, Dr. Bertone?
Well, our body is a beautiful biocomputer on one hand, but we are also equipped with what Pat and I would call biotransducer mechanisms. In other words, we can tune into the vibrations of the universe. And this work is important because it really opens us up to really the background energy field that we exist in. We are literally swimming in hyperspace. We are capable of hearing much more than we are trained to hear with a normal hearing system. And this was the impetus behind some of the experiments with colleagues at NASA that wanted to see if the astronauts in outer space could communicate back to Mother Earth with all the technology shut off. And some of our suggestions at that time was there was in the area what we call the third eye, or the pineal gland, this ability to focus and to really bring a hemispheric unity between the left and the right. Bob Monroe later called this the hemisync, the ability to put both left and right lobes together in terms of ultrasonics. But we had, working in Jet Propulsion Lab and working with the Academy for Parapsychology and Medicine, began to look at the possibilities that we were all connected wherever we were on the globe. We were part of a global mind that had to really find the finer frequencies that already exist.
Yeah.
I don't think we realize how much the brain can do. And right now at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, they've hooked up 64 electrodes onto the scalp, and they're able to take a toy helicopter at a distance, and by just thinking how the helicopter should fly, like it should go up, down, sideways, it should land, they're sending the signal via actually Wi-Fi, but the whole thing is not, there's no hand controls whatsoever. They're actually doing it all by these electrodes in the brain hooked up to a Wi-Fi device. So it shows that the brain is incredible in terms of managing reality.
My interest has always been in brain entrainment and being able to entrain our brains and like with the neurophone, if you use it for 7 weeks, your brain will resemble that of a 30-year meditator, even if you've never meditated. You know, that we're in a modern age, we should have modern meditation.
Yeah, instead of sitting in a cave.
Yeah. Right.
Back in the 1970s, the Academy for Parapsychology and Medicine did some studies with Ted Sirius, who had the opportunity, when the camera was put on his brain, he could think a mental picture that was then registered in the camera itself.
Well, have you had telepathic?
Well, I want to say, when Patrick and I met, my daughter became our daughter, was 14. And she was a freshman, and she was doing terrible. And Patrick came into my life. We immediately got her out of public school. She only tried that for 3 months. Anyway, we put her back in private school and put the neurophone on her. And she went in and became a straight A student.
Failing grades to straight A in 1 month.
So it increases your intelligence or your ability to focus, or
It increases
long-term memory.
the focus. Even the neurophone, she would just put it on her head while she would read, And previously, she would read a paragraph and then go into the second paragraph and forget what was in the first one. And then when she put the neurophone on with no coaching, I just put it on and said, now read with that. She could remember everything that she read and didn't have to go back and reread it. It changed that drastically.
So it could be good for autism, ADD.
Oh, yeah.
Those experiments.
Well, I was autistic as a child, and the neurophone has helped me tremendously.
Probably pushing the envelope here. Sorry. Yeah, thanks. These are some of the same experiences I've had in my life. I was pretty much exhausted from the car wreck and the coma. I was probably dead, formed over. By rejuvenating these energy grids, we can learn to do a lot of things that kind of rejuvenates the body. And I was called in about 82 for a lecture on this technology because it was brand new at the time. And government kind of hushed it up and kept it under security for 30 years also. But I started off the lecture with studies from people that use hypnosis. You could tell the energy pattern of a frog in a tadpole state. This hypnosis gentleman, I can't remember his name offhand, but there's another one, Harold Saxton Burr wrote a book called Life Fields. And these life fields were considered the energy blueprint, like I just mentioned. These life fields, according to Harold Saxton Burr, in the book stated that if you could balance these, you could live forever. So our energy fields are that important in our life. There was Dr. Buteau in Massachusetts doing similar works. Some of that was in the hypnosis state, altering fields and so forth. Dr. Boll in Europe actually pioneered a lot of stuff back in the early 70s. And this is just about 76, 77 when I was doing all this stuff, that Dr. Pohl did energy grids and environmental grids and all kinds of things in his book in Germany. Well, Germany became a leader, probably next to Russia in some ways, because we go into the term of psychotronics, and psychotronics back in the 60s was a buzzword for mind control and how the Russians were using it in Germany and other places in the embassies to manipulate people. So the U.S. got into it later on looking for solutions. And one of the reasons I gave you the definition report here, and those that didn't get one, we can get you some, is to show some of the terminology. And this is very important because we have, the first term is psychotronics. And this started off in the Cold Wars. What were the Russians doing? How were people learning? Well, there was also a group of gals that did psychic discoveries behind the Iron Curtain. And as they did these studies, they eventually came out with a book that really made them the money and the success called Super Learning. How music worked. Well, the key to all that study was a study the government did called Music in Your Emotions. And they document how music, basically frequencies, influence the body to learn. And we saw how this happened with Flanagan's daughter, Dr. Daughter, whatever. And we see how this can help people with all kinds of focusing problems, ADD, and other types of autistic ability. I know Flanagan was considered that way. 8 years old, he invented the neurophone. By the time he was 16, he was rated one of the 10 top scientists. Government had classified most of his stuff from 8 to 16 at that point. And if you ever get into the neurophone, the psychic ability seemed to open up. Keep a lid on that. Got secret stuff going on. All kinds of secret stuff. I got some handouts on some of those also down here that aren't on the table that you guys can get into. But the timely application that we're going to talk about here a little bit today is where we are and what we're doing with it today. We all can be applying it. We all can use it. One of the major involvements was this acupuncture relationship. Here's a 8 to 10,000 year old study that people were using. And if you read the definition, it's about pricking the skin, and it's actually about moving energy. I remember in the Reiki field, one gal who was an acupuncturist used to put the needles in and then stand over her patient to move the energy, and all the needles would start vibrating. We can do all these little toys and tricks and stuff and have fun with it, but you get in touch with the energies. This is what all Reiki was, different varieties of energy, where the energy was going, and things like that. Well, what was even much smoother was we can use other light forms, and laser came into the picture, laser acupuncture. In the definition, they talk about how things seem to self-correct itself. What is this phenomenon? Well, there's a book and an article that I really fell in love with. It came out a few months ago in National Geographic about Mary. Now, I used references that I had at the time. There are over 300 different names for inner energy. Qi, Kung Fu, D-Mark, and Reiki, and things like that. Some of them mental, some of them physical. And it's interesting how they have 7,000 documentations on Mary's aberrations, Guadalupe, and things like that. But what was really interesting to me is because I knew the sanctity of using the term healing, and the experts really stressed the point you should be talking spontaneous remission. That definition is also in here, and it relates to the quantum physics. Quantum physics is a branch of psychology as well as science today, because there's something else going on. We're not quite sure what it is, but it all seems to come back to the energy flow, the spontaneous regeneration, are legal terms that people talk about. And in the article is so beautiful, I happened to catch an interview later on, a couple of days ago. Somebody said, "Oh, you got to see this interview of this woman," and it turned out to be the gal that was writing this article. And it's so beautiful the way they've incorporated all this knowledge. People don't realize that in our Bible there's only 4 references to Mary. In the Quran there's probably 100 or 50 and stories. And we kind of need to bring these religions to find out what really works, what really is sharing with us the knowledge of what's going on in this universe where one atom or electron and somewhere else in the galaxy another electron vibrates together. They're connected. The universe is really connected. So we want to understand more of that stuff, and as a result, this neurophone technology back like 60 years ago, Flanagan used the altered stateness to build what was called a dolphin translator. Took dolphin language into English and vice versa. This is a vibration thing. This is a heart thing, not a head thing here. If you would please, let's roll that next clip.
The most remarkable inventions we had was to communicate with underwater life.
Yeah, dolphins. During the Vietnam War, I worked for a naval ordnance test station out of China, California. It was called knots. They say that knots makes Area 51 look like a children's playground. We had dolphins in Hawaii, and this is before you had computer chips or integrated circuits. So we built a computer that translates human speech into dolphin language whistles, and then it translated dolphin whistles back into human speech again. And so we were developing a common language between man and dolphin, and also we used my neural phone on the dolphins, which is unique. And but what happened is that the idea was to develop a 500-word vocabulary, and if any language, there are 500 words that if you know them, you can communicate with anyone in that language and then expand your knowledge and vocabulary. And so the idea was that we were going to teach the dolphins 500 words, and then we talked to each other. We got up to 35 words. And we also proved, Skinner, the animal behaviors, said that all animals are just stimulus response organisms, including humans. But he said that animals can't think. And so he said, if, for example, we had commands, we tell the dolphin, swim out, swim through a loop, touch a ball, go get a ring, and bring it back. And the dolphin would do that. And then the dolphin could tell a human diver to do the same thing. And they would. And human divers would do what the dolphins would. It was like a game. But Skinner said that if you tell the dolphin to go swim through the hoop and touch the ball, but halfway there you say, no, touch the ball first, then swim through the hoop, that will confuse the dolphin, and that he won't be able to do anything. And we proved it wrong. The dolphins, they were way ahead of us. They are so smart.
So the U.S. Navy can somehow kind of, in a way, ambush the project, right?
Yes, my partner, Dr. Dwight Bateau, who was a Harvard Tufts University professor, material scientist, and information theory specialist, Shannon's information theory. He died. I was the third partner in the company, and the guy by the name of Steve Moser was the third partner, and Dwight Bateau. And we built all the electronic equipment, which was discrete transistors. I mean, we're talking about complex computer that's made out of just transistors, thousands of transistors, circuits, logic circuits. But anyway, so Wayne Bateau went to Hawaii, and he went swimming in 3 feet of water every morning, and he drowned in 3 feet of water, very suspiciously. So the government stopped the dolphin project. They put it under secrecy for 75 years, and the results of our research still won't be available until 2025. And but nobody ever told me I couldn't talk about it. So.
What's next for you?
Continuing wherever the divine wants me to be, and I'm so excited about what's happening in the world and in the spiritual world, not one with all the radioactivity of Fukushima and all the things. There's such big dichotomies in the world that we have. Sai Baba once said that mankind will have to be brought to its knees in order to pray to God. And if that's true, then that's probably what's happening. But I'm just here for the ride and grateful and thankful. I'm thankful to you for all that you've done for me and all of those things.
We talked earlier about intention, highest intention, trustless awareness, whatever the divine. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you.
have some more definitions on here about quantum physics. You have to understand Planck's constant and all these other things. But it leads up to a term also called quantum entanglement. And that's where everything in the universe seems to have this connection. But right now we have a lot of changes going on. You see it on the news. You see it with NOAA, NOAA studies. But in addition to that, NOVA has an incredible program you can get in the library or pull off the web called Magnetic Storm. All this stuff is alluding to some sort of energy shift. One of the main consciousness connections of this energy shift is how we integrate and live with it. The ability to put you into a higher state of hearing, they call it quantum healing, or other forms. There's the new rays coming in that people talk about. And when the sun is created, like in the Big Bang, there's a tremendous amount of hydrogen created, negative ions, which is very essential for life. And you can go on Flanagan's webpage and see some of these things, the interviews and stuff, and how different people from the basic to whatever doing their research and getting connected with this process. But the scientific seems to be a way that we can understand a lot of these things. So the next page in your group of pages that I gave you is called Science of Light. I mean, not Science of Light, but it's a balance of Trinity. And there's some write-ups in here. And this is on my webpage too. And I go through the body, mind, spirit connections. Well, the body itself, I have under the first part, structured energy allows for more energy to flow. It's like a battery. If the proper chemistry is going on, you get a good charge going on. The flow is good. Essentially, that would be part of the water talk that you can study and learn about. The 72 trace minerals in Hunzaland, Flanagan was nominated for a Nobel Prize on this stuff. When you're balanced chemistry, the energy flows better. And you can do better energy work. The mind, which is where the energy work is kind of being monitored today through brain waves and other forms, laser acupuncture we talked about earlier, has what they call paramagnetic applications, or energy follows thought, your creative connection, your intent, where you're going with all this. Thoughts are creative is the last soul connection, or spirit. It's kind of like a full cycle of these things going on. And so I was down at the Indian Cancer Center in Houston, Texas with Beth Gray back in probably 80s, early 80s. And the Qigong Foundation, we came in the back door to do this aid and therapy, kind of to introduce it to the people. And I had that study also on that Trinity concept. And out of about 50 people, I got 35 at the end of the little class we did that weekend, where they were balanced out. If you were hyper, it kind of brought you down. If you're hypo, it brought you up. A good example of that is I did a Reiki session on, actually a couple of them, a guy in Hawaii and a guy in Colorado. It was interesting. Both of them had been in the Air Force. Both of them named were Steve. Both of them had been married and divorced. They had similar life patterns. They both worked real hard at times, played real hard. And I did a full Reiki treatment on them, and they both slept for 3 days straight. Both of them came out of that state and rearranged their whole lives to where they wanted to be. Business-wise, life-wise, everything. And I thought that was a miracle. We can use that term, spontaneous remission. So understanding this whole balance of Trinity thing is partly connecting it with the scientists and other people that are trying to prove things that work in our life or don't work. And everybody's different, so you may need a little bit. In fact, at the end of that picture, is a picture of Beth Ray, and she brought Takata over here and started the Reiki craze. And she was one of the first 7 masters that Takata created. It was not a money thing in those days. So it's almost like the Muslims when I was living in Iran for a couple of years in the 60s. They said, well, you look at a person from their heart or their head. Where are they coming from? And I thought, that's interesting. We really need to bring that back a little bit. I mean, I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a Christian. I'm not into religions. But I got into the science, and I got into reading the Bible and seeing how the Bible was this metaphysical storytelling and how people could do things in altered states and have people blow horns and a castle fall down or a fort or whatever. You know, the stories were remarkable. How did they do that? And like I said, the Quran has Mary mentioned, 10 or 100 times more than what's going on in our Christian world. I'm not trying to put the Christian down because there are stories in there. Just don't get me caught up in these things one at a time. Whatever I say here, I'm going to deny. But in the meantime, I want us to get back to some of these basics. There's also behind that a water study that was done on the wetness of water. And the wetness of water means its absorption capability. Well, when Flanagan was nominated for this Nobel Prize, this study shows the wetness of water, how it's absorbed in the cell. To me, the 72 trace minerals are like the 72 sacred names in Hebrew. Water normally is a denser state, 75 dynes than blood, 45 dynes. Fresh juice is clean, it flushes the cell structure. Juices lose their elasticity. Whereas Hunter water was 68 dynes, and these people lived to 250 years old. That wasn't until they put electronics in the valley. They lost 100 years there. But a 150-year-old person is still outlived, I don't know, most of us probably will. The crystal energy water that we offer, that I recommend, is so far down below the blood level that it just flushes the cell toxins out at 38 dynes. Most of your catalyst waters, Willard waters, all those things are between 70 and 73 dynes. So that's their secret, basically. I'm giving you a little glimpse into the knowledge of why these things work. This balance of Trinity thing, where I'll start with the mind, mass. To me, I came up with this formula 40 years ago. The mind, c squared. What's faster than the speed of light? Anybody know? Take a guess.
Thought.
Definitely, speed of thought. It's like this quantum entanglement out here. There's something instant we've got to tap into. C squared is the speed of light. What's faster than that, And then pure energy. To me, Einstein's formula, E equals mc squared, is just a balance of trinities. That was an interesting concept. The bodies as a report card of the consciousness. Louise Hayes really got that out of her. And it was neat to meet her and talk to her because she was trained by Beth as well back in the early days. So air, water, food are all these ways that we can absorb these things in our body. The mind, energy follows thought. I mentioned thoughts are things. We manifest energy grids around these. We call that sacred geometry today. Om has a brainwave pattern. How many are familiar with that? That brainwave research. Here is a brainwave search of Ohm, a high theta stimulus, usually around the 7.8 the Schumann frequency. The Schumann frequency, mantra versus yantra, a symbol. Well, in the frequency in scientific community, that works out to be about 7.8, the Earth frequency. Some people may feel this. Let's see if I can do this. Uh-oh. My battery's gone. And I didn't bring a charger. Well, I've got another example. Sorry about that, Charlie. I need a new battery. Let's go back into the 7.83 frequency relationship. The Earth vibrates at about that. You had people, Merlin and people living in caves periodically. That was the Earth frequency. Flanagan made mention in his talk about where is the relationship of deep meditation versus a 30-year-old monk in a cave. He achieved that within about 6 weeks with the neurophone. We need to get back quickly to these states of consciousness and utilize them. The soul power, the connection, creativeness, and all that other stuff. I have some brainwave stuff I didn't hand out. If people want them, I can hand them out or get them later.
Mason, can we have
And
your
it talks
website?
about these things. Yeah.
What is your website so we can write it down?
The one that doesn't have all this stuff I put together today, but it has the study of the Reiki. It has the 72 trace minerals study. And you go into it and you have to go more information. And it's called Trinity for You. Trinity, F-O-R-Y-O-U. This stuff I put together, some I was managing to put on the video, which we're going to see some videos, pictures, more than YouTube's. But these new gamma rays coming in, what's going on with the sun? Why is it changing? I got into doing a lot of things with the Earth and living with the Earth and off-grid and all that stuff. And my dome, talk about structured energy, was actually equivalent to the Queen's Chamber in Egypt. I used to wear glasses. The energy flow every night in this environment. Structured energy allowed for more energy to self-correct itself. Do what it was supposed to do. We have a lot of handouts over here on some of the dome stuff I did. And solar stuff. Solar Age used to sponsor me on tours and stuff. This particular book is nice. These are handouts. Everything on this table is pretty much a handout. Everything over there is my personal stuff. But to see the solar flares and what they're doing is a different story from integrating with it. And that's where this balance of Trinity comes in. How do we integrate this knowledge and wisdom? Do we have another slide here? Or what's the next one?
The next was supposed to be the third video.
Is it that soon? I don't even know if I'm off of page 1 here.
I don't think we ever got to page 1. We're going all over. It's in the flow here.
Well, thank you. Global Science in 96.
There we go.
I was noted, I've got handouts here also for that, which was interesting. They were introducing Gordon Michael Scallion. How many people are familiar with him? Good portion. He did a newsletter back in '93. Now this is 10 years after a lot of my psychotronic involvement. The Global Science newsletter, I want to read you a little thing, the intro to it. Home Sweet Dome, what is all this stuff about masonry domes? Speaker, we're hearing so much about the changes on the front page of Scallion's last newsletter. Enclosed is a type of construction that may be available in solution to aid of the surviving coming years. That's 20-some years ago. I just didn't get a lot of support there. These are also available if you need them, handouts and things like that. But I'm trying to get back to this frequency. How do we understand all these frequencies? And So we get into a new age where everybody gets into cell phones and stuff. And I used to lecture against that for a long time, long before cell phones came out. AC current and its relationship to cancer at the time. Now we're super doing it. We need to back off. We need to slow down. You know? We need the body to slow down so we know how to do these things. That's the key. Within your own soul, how are you going to deal with these external directions? Understanding wisdom and earth changes through frequencies. We have magnetic shifts occurring. The earth changes. These domes will take 4 or more, 100, maybe 500 mile an hour winds. We got winds and tornadoes and hurricanes wiping out neighborhoods. And it's growing. You can also go on some of the YouTubes, masonrumney.com, which is another webpage. And most people know me because of the dome. It became 20 years of my life living in this thing, sharing the knowledge. But when the money people came in, they put power grids along the ley lines and bent the ley lines, and everything's getting a little shaky. A little more shaky than we need to be. Earth pulses, we talked about that relationship in the body, and part of that is with pyramids. The brain wave, we can actually monitor the definition of brain wave is measuring frequencies and waveforms going on. The ohm frequency, which is 7.8. The earth frequency. These things have parallels, and they can take us into parallel dimensions. Lower alpha states don't always do that. Drug states, things like that. Then I'd like to, what kind of picture we got next here?
I'm off book. I'm just following you.
Can we, yeah, we can go back to that. Any one of those? Everybody's got those handouts. Rock art. Well, that's brainwave. Let's just go back to the next one. Well, this one, this is not in the same order, but this is the mathematics of the third eye. You'll see this pop up in many places, people looking at this relationship. Let's go to the next slide. I need to get some visuals here. I need actually the third eye relationship. There we go. And do we have the third eye with the inner ear?
We do. It's
there.
That's the one.
Can we make it smaller or bigger? Whoa! The original's small, just like the inner ear. But this is how dolphins communicate, through the inner ear. It's undeveloped in humans. And certain stimulus, in particular the neural pulse, stimulates this inner ear through the gamma rays. We're in an age where gamma rays are coming in. We have to be able to understand this connection. And you can see the picture on the right with the third eye in Egypt and the inner ear and how parallel they look. I don't know, can you guys see that pretty well? I'm looking for one in here maybe, in case it helps. They're all black. There we go. I don't know, is that bigger? It's about the same size, really. Okay? And it's actually connected with the inner glands in the brain. Some people call it the crystal palace in Hindu. I didn't get that one up on the pictures for you to see, but you can also find these on certain web pages about the third eye and things like that, and how the glands integrate. And we should have a blue picture of that somewhere.
Crystal
That
Palace
is not working.
disappeared.
So anyway, this whole integration process again is becoming even more profound at this point. There it is. So, what I'd like to do, and this picture used to always intrigue me. But you meet someone like a Kundalini master, and you shake hands, and explosion of light, and all these answers to every question happen. You go, holy cow! There's all kinds of forms of communication going on that we don't know. Next again. I want to get into the two snakes kissing here.
Two snakes kissing. Just gotta go back out. It's gonna be easier.
Right there. I need, we got a picture of that too. Everybody got one of these handouts. Some people have been out to this area. There's a tremendous amount of information out there. In fact, Michael and I were out there recently with somebody that talked archaeoastronomy.
Yay!
It wasn't until this guy started telling me what it's all about on these pictures that I got it.
Wasn't Scott Wolfer, was it?
No. But he would be a good one to enjoy some of this stuff. And I'd like to tell stories, so I'm going to tell one. We were out there after an hour or so, and this guy's documenting and going through all this stuff. And we're sitting there, and he goes, nobody could ever figure out why the two snakes were kissing. What does that mean? This guy goes, now this is a guy that has archaeology books out there. The natives give him a free pass on his property up in the Navajo territory to douse and do things. And he goes, well, it's what was the sign? Scorpio. The sign of Scorpio. He said, if you sit here tonight and you look out there, you should see Scorpio. Well, if you look at that circle and the two snakes kissing, it's a dating system. The two snakes kissing in archaeoastronomy is a dating system. And if we're sitting there and watching Scorpio out in the horizon at night, we didn't do that. This gal had an app and put it up there, and there it was. You can buy apps on that today. It's on television. Get the app.
You don't have to buy it.
Wow, whatever.
Google Sky.
Google Sky? Thank you. It answered the questions. It was like all this information came in so clearly at that point. I've been going out there for 30 years. People, look at this. Look at this. What's it saying? Well, if you look at the circle here, and then you look in the Keys of Enoch, there's this circle. Can we have the next slide, please?
Merkaba.
It's a little bit more than that. It's the explanation of the... there we go. Thank you. Now, I have a real hard time with these big words. Electromagnetic what? Anybody read that word? That's a big word. I think these guys make up these terms. Because nobody else knows what to say, right?
Do we have that on paper?
It says electromagnetic, hydrodynamic changes.
Thank you.
Magnetohydrodynamic.
That's one word?
Yep. Magnetohydrodynamic. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but, you know, if we go back to that other picture in the beginning, it's doing the same thing. The only difference is the two snakes are giving us a date. We're in that time. We all know that. But we're in the prophecy times. We're into the changes and understanding energies. These new gamma rays that can give us answers because it's a different form of communication. You know? Things like that.
So the snakes do represent frequencies, basically?
The two snakes are kissing.
And they do represent frequencies? I mean, it looks like frequencies.
Well, yeah, they could represent that. Snakes have always represented kind of awareness and frequency thing. Snakes have a very interesting way of, it's like developing our whole body energy. they work off of that extensively. I mean, sure, their tongue senses things, and they go around sniffing things at yards or hundreds of yards even. I don't know what's going on in their environment through that sensitivity. I mean, it's like the dog and listening. They got such beyond our senses capability.
I was just wondering if we would compare that picture
To
to
brain waves.
frequencies or brainwave diagram.
Well,
what kind of resonance would come out of that?
right. Well,
Did
we showed a little video on that, how different frequencies did different things, but I don't think they were that evolved at that time. I mean, they're way beyond us because they have it simple, and they're perceiving it for simple, and they're staying connected to the basics. We get intellectual and we miss some of that. But this is an area that I've been taking people out to for 20, 30 years or so. And it wasn't until that guy goes, a dating system, arco-astronomy, Scorpio, rising kind of thing. And I went, oh, cow. It just all came together. I mean, I knew parts of it. In fact, if we got the next slide of the purifier with the Wolf Lodge.
It's coming.
Now, there was a gentleman who went out to this area. There it is. And this is part of the write-up. And he took some Hopi elders out to these pictures, country place, whatever. And they gave him definitions. The two snakes kissing wasn't the same definition that I got from arco-astronomy. But this one was really interesting. That looks like a solar flare to me. And you can read more about the details of that in some of these things. Can we get a big blow up of this solar flare or purifier, the Hopis call it? There. To me, purifier means solar flare. Maybe that's a leap. But how are we going to change things? Like Sai Baba was saying, mankind has to be brought to his knees to understand how we're going to change things, really. And we have to be conscious of how to do these things. I mean, I know when I broke my leg, I was doing all kinds of stuff. And I'd already been through this car wreck scenario, coma state. And I was skiing before my studies one day before a 2-year program. I broke my leg. I was in the hospital 10 days while they operated. 10 days. They never caught me. My left leg, I complained about the pain. Apparently I broke my spine and they never caught it. The nerve endings in the third lumbar are all with the knee, and that's what I was saying, it was painful. Ripped those nerve endings. The leg was so badly broken, what they call a boot line fracture, it takes at least 2 to 3 years almost to heal. It was interesting, I was doing all these things and it healed in 4 weeks. The doctors didn't want to talk about it. I mean, we're all vulnerable, you know. We all make mistakes, but this was phenomenal. I could go back to work. Now I'm getting out of the hospital, which I did. They put a rod in my leg the second operation. The first operation, I was walking on this bone broken, grinding the bone down because the left was so much more in pain. That's why I was in the hospital so long, doing these operations, so they could find one where I could deal with it and have it healed. Show another picture. We'll show you maybe a wider angle of this. Yeah. If those aren't sunspots, I don't know what they are. Somebody may have put the second eye on there, but that wasn't originally there, I think. But this ability to communicate is so important in human nature. Integration and things like that. Let's go again. We have to. What's the last video on?
The hydrogen.
Hydrogen,
water.
yeah. That's exactly where we need to go.
Okay.
The hydrogen burst, Big Bang, abundance of negative ions. And in one of Flanagan's YouTube scenarios, he talks about buying one of these bottles and equivalent to this $40 bottle is like $33,000 in the health food store. There's that much difference in the negative ions and how important it is. Here's the crystal water we talked about earlier. We're not allowed to sell them here, but I have order forms later on. Let's see what he says about this. And I will take a quick break.
I'm the inventor of Crystal Energy and Mega Hydrate. And Mega Hydrate is the most powerful antioxidant ever discovered. And it's negative ionized hydrogen. And we're going to do an experiment today to show you that this product really does contain hydrogen. Now, I take every day, I take 6 of these capsules, and this is a brand new bottle, never been opened. This is a brand new bottle of water, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour out about a third of this bottle of water. We need some breathing room. There we go. We're going to open up a brand new bottle of Mega Hydrate. Take a couple right now. World's most powerful antioxidant. So we take that, and we're going to put 6 capsules. 6. We put the 6 capsules in the bottle in the water, and we're going to shake it up. See how foamy it is? That foam is hydrogen, negative ionized hydrogen. When I was 17 years old, I was working for the Pentagon, at a Pentagon think tank up in Connecticut. I met Dr. Henri Coanda, who had 500 patents on fluid dynamics. And he told me that he was researching the fountain of youth. And he said there really is a fountain of youth, and Ponce de Leon, all these people were looking for it. And he said there's a place north of Pakistan called Hunzaland, where the people live to be 130 years old. They have children at the age of 100. And he went there before the turn of the century. And in order to get there, he had to cross steaming jungles and climb mountain peaks and cross rope bridges and then steaming jungles. And it took 3 months to get there. And when he got there, they had this special water. And it came from the mountain peaks. And they had a well in town where they had clean water, and the tourists liked to drink that. But the Hunza people wouldn't drink that water. They drank this cloudy water that came down from the mountains. And the cloudy water had these minerals in it. And Dr. Coanda said that he could test any water, and he could tell the average age of death of the people who drank that water within 5 years, anywhere in the world. And so he gave me his research on water. He couldn't figure out why that water was so powerful. He could only tell me the characteristics of it. And so he gave me his research when I was 17. And I began my 20-year quest looking for the secrets of Hunza water. And the first thing I discovered is that the special Hunza water had these special glacial minerals made out of silica. And I was able to duplicate that water and created Crystal Energy. We're going to have to shift things around here, and We're going to have to turn the lights off.
Thank you. Okay. How are we going to stay balanced? How are we going to keep a body, mind, spirit consciousness going?
Release all those energy vampires that have been hanging around them.
You want to put that out loud? There was a book that I liked. I have actually one extra. They're used for Jude. But Linda Green, Jesus Speaks, has a whole chapter on the adamantine particle. I've never found anybody quite understanding that, and since this is the only place I've seen it written, where Jesus tells her about discovering this creative form of life. The God particle, which we talk about in Lucerne. The relationship of this conscious connection that opens these doors of reality for us. Or faith-based consciousness. These are all part of the divine connection to me. How do we apply it? Well, the adamantine particle forms all elements, and I hope it's in your definitions, are the smallest indivisible particle that assembles the atom of all original substance like oxygen, nitrogen, iron, in other words, everything that is, including our bodies. How do we get this balance so well ingrained in us so that the new wave structures act on this bioplasmic maser-like action-reaction? Terms again. New structures are reprogramming the mind-body as in the reprogramming of a computer. Powerful concepts that I like to play with in meditation or spontaneous remission. There was a conference at the Psychotronics about 30, 20 years ago. They got wind of this thing and you had people running around. Spontaneous remission. That's like one of the interviews with Flanagan's wife, that her talks called it, what's the military term for psychic?
Remote viewers?
Remote viewing, thank you. And sometimes these terms have to be looked at, which is acceptable terms in the scientific community. Sometimes we have to connect with these terms a little bit more in our explanation of life. And then we get into the history of awareness. I mentioned 300 different names for energy, inner energy, synergy, structuring energy so that things flow better. Ascension. Wow, there's a big one. Everybody bandies that one around over in certain areas of the town. Kundalini, caves for meditation, going out on the land. Here's a good one, mentioned in the Keys of Enoch Aherta, the Deca Delta system. What is that? Deca? 10? Delta. What's in the Bible where any 10 or more of us gather together? People who meditate in cities, the crime goes down. Is it the whole wave pattern that we become one with and share our consciousness with? Application and use of this new knowledge. It seemed to work at the MDM Cancer Center. There's the study. Near-death experiences, people always talk about these things. communication with dolphins, spontaneous remission, my leg. So the importance of body, mind, spirit, and quantum entanglement are new vocabulary for today. It's used in all kinds of modalities and studied, from hypnosis, yoga, tai chi, laser acupuncture, indigenous practice. Somebody once wanted to know why I put pyrite on my nail. 20 and some years ago, I worked with a gal that had a tumor. And it was documented by someone in town that's the head of cancer in the area over there. And it shrank. The first thing that the doctor told her was, no nail polish. Your acupuncture is just tips of the fingers on either end, tips of the toes. Very sensitive places. We've all seen some of this. How do we incorporate more of that in our life? I must admit, I started sleeping a little better. It's that pulsating 7.8 all the time with pyrite. Magnetically doing it. Magnets, they shift polarity. Every 2 weeks, it'll strengthen the system, and then if you got it hooked up the same way, you don't switch to north-south the next 2 weeks, it weakens it. So, polarized things can do things, but I wouldn't live on it, let's just say. It might help with pain and stuff, but don't do it all the time. So that's the body. Herbs, supplements. I used to work with the GNC products for a long time. Then I worked with Amazon Herbs. I lectured over here at Ecotourism when they had it in Sedona for years. Herbs. I didn't need to buy all the herbs. I only needed one bottle. Instead of thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars, it was $60 at the time. They're down to 40 almost. The mind, chemistry, works better, like a battery. The non-physical mind has nothing to do with the brain. The brain is the whole energy grid. You know that. You can bandy, spirit, and New Age, and all kinds of religions and things around, but it's bringing them all together that's so important. And there are these books that I recommend and stuff, in particular the Keys of Enoch, that really outlines that. It's how do you decode it? You do mantras to get yourself into that state, to understand what's being said.
That's a deep, deep, deep.
It is. But if you can see it, it tells you what's going on. And that's why I referenced it. I've been studying it for 30 years, and it came along 10 or years after I got into this stuff, or 5 years even. To me, I was doing the neurophone with the Course in Miracles. That was kind of my introduction to both of them. Powerful, powerful synergy and combination. Synergy is incredible, doing all these things together. I used to do what's called an inverted pyramid, a copper pyramid in Gya, Hindu practice. Very powerful. It was almost like a complete Reiki treatment. I was blown away. And of course I was seeing all kinds of things in other dimensions anyway. Not always loving. Sounds like my life. Battles. So, if there's some of these things that you would like to get into a little bit more, I can talk about. I enjoyed this particular book called Mass Dreams of the Future, and I do have a couple of them, or I had a couple of them. What happens? Oh, I do have 2 of them that are newish, if not new. Mass Dreams of the Future was 2,500 cases of people seeing into the future. It's interesting. You're at a dome conference down in Texas, and government people start showing up and go, "Can you make these things underwater?" Sure. Well, the guy who built my dome taught NASA in the 60s how to do it for the moon. Who knows what they did with that knowledge? There's a lot of controversy on these things. But they talk about areas on the planet. They talk about underwater, colonizing space, and areas, pockets, I should say. Is that all four of them? Where the consciousness can be integrated with the earth. Kind of like my healing my eyes in the dome for a while. That was supposed to be very much like the pyramid in Egypt, a similar energy brainwave research that went on between those concepts. I met a guy later on. I said I was having problems with people, and there were some hairy creatures that befriended me. The guy wanted to know about domes, so we were on the same page. He sent me his book. He said, maybe this will help you understand these guys more. But it was like the dolphins in communication. Once you're at this Deca-Delta consciousness, it seemed to open up a lot. I have some extra things here that I recommend. Louis L'Amour passed away. Didn't finish his book. A lot of people think this is science fiction. There's something here. He didn't get this all out the way he wanted to write it, so somebody finished it for him.
What's the name of the book?
Haunted Mesa. I have a couple of used copies up here that I pick up, and if people want those, I might sell them or something for a few bucks. Different concepts of National Geographic. They've really gone out on a limb. The whole thing on solar and what the world's doing. Realize Germany's going to be off the grid completely pretty soon? No other country's doing that. Why not?
What's the name of that more book again?
Haunted Mesa.
Haunted
Okay.
or haunted?
Haunting.
Haunted.
There are articles I used to use. They're not on there. Coherent Light with Healing. This is an incredible article. This stuff was used to be put out in Nexus magazine until they kind of withered away. We got pretty caught up in cell phones and advertising by then. You know, the economy was more important. Articles, The Architect's Stupid. In Solar Age magazine, I recommend. Do you realize architecture uses close to 50% of our energy? Cars only use 25%. And industry 25%. Where's our priorities? And of course that 50% of architecture, heating and cooling is 50% is air conditioning alone. One item. People were upset because I did a video. I was heating and cooling my house on $15 a year. A year. People. This was beautiful. I could get rid of all these people that I didn't have control over. Not that I had control issues. I'm flexible. I love to do weird things for kids. I mean, majority of people may think this is a little childish, but you know, I sit here and do these things. Kids can entertain themselves all day with that. You know? But being flexible, really, a little visual goes a long ways. None of what you see, and definitely none of what you hear. Half of what you see, maybe. How's my timing going? I've got some time for questions or...
Questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk.
Got about a half hour.
Do you have any information in 2016?
To what?
In 2016?
Oh, 2016?
Any insights or?
Well, I think the market, they always say that the first day of the market always tells you what's going to happen the year. I think the politicians doing what they're doing.
So what happened?
Yeah, so what
What?
happened after
The first day of the market?
Oh, it took a dive. China's market dropped 25%. We went down a bit, but we're not 100% involved, so we can come back. There's definitely a need for change. We all talk about it. We want to embrace it.
We gotta boot out all our government officials.
Well, unfortunately, it's like Sai Baba said on that interview, mankind has to be brought to his knees. We have to learn to be simple and beautiful.
Look at our beliefs, too.
Huh?
We have to look at our belief systems.
Exactly. Well, what our attachment, our needs, everything. In fact, I have a meditation, and what I was going to do is, this has a very powerful frequency, but the battery's not there. We were going to play with it tonight. I mean, I have the Barron report on scalar technology. I worked at a place called the Q Lab. And we were doing all kinds of things. I have one of old Earth Changes by Gordon Michael Scallion here and stuff like that. And of course, a couple of handouts you guys didn't get. But the meditation and the thought process of who we are, I would love to take a few minutes and read this one to you. Because it's all about letting go. You know, or
And letting God.
expecting something to change on its own. We don't have to make the changes. We just have to be calm. To let go does not mean to stop caring. It means I can't do it for someone else. To let go is not to cut myself off. It's the realization I can't control another. To let go is not to admit powerlessnesses, which means the outcome is not in my hands. To let go is not to enable, but to allow learning through natural consequences. To let go is not to try to change or blame another. It's to make the most of myself. To let go is not to care for, but to care about. To let go is not to judge, but allow another to be a human being. To let go is not to be in the middle, arranging all the outcomes, but to allow others to affect their own destinies. To let go is not to be protective, it's to bring another to face reality. To let go is not to deny, but to accept. To let go is not to nag, scold, or argue, but instead to search out my own shortcomings and correct them. To let go is not to adjust everything to my desires, but to take each day as it comes and cherish it myself. To let go is not to criticize, regulate anybody, but to try to become more of what I dream I can be. To let go is not to regret the past, but to grow and live for the future. To let go is to fear less and love more. Author unidentified. I must admit, I had a hard time getting people into the dome stuff. I mean, several topics we've covered today, from cyclotronics to Reiki. It was a 3-day thing. Cyclotronics could have been an all-day seminar. The domes for 20 years, off and on, lecturing and stuff. You definitely can pick up some of these handouts if you want, and more of the other, and a few that you didn't get. There's some here on electronics. There again, terminology can be involved. And when you state things, what amazes me is the way they throw up these cell towers. You know there's a half-mile rule? That you can't put a cell tower within half a mile of residential? Mm-hmm. What's happening? The legal things you can say is about cell phones and stuff is headaches behind the ear, radical increased production and toxicity, impairing the immune system and destroying the DNA, increasing permeability in the blood and the brain barriers through toxic chemicals, reduced sex drive, of course, everybody wants, premature aging and wrinkling in the face, creating DNA breaks are shown in cell malmutations, sleepiness, confusion, and things like that. These are all illegal stuff again, which you can say if you ever get in a weird spot. I have some of those and 2 or 3 extras that have complete 4-page articles to explain to people a little more in depth some of this concept. And I thank you for your time. I get to stroke myself. You know, I had a hard time trying to get other people to do domes with me. I have this dream of doing a movie. Nobody wanted it. Nobody liked the title, Dome and Domer. Who wants to hang out with him? What part of that are you?